Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Coast News. And as always, we've got some amazing news from different theme parks, rides, attractions and events all over the world. So let's get straight into the news today. Our top story for tonight, Voltron at Europa-Park has taken its first ever human riders on the ride at Europa-Park. And this is actually a weird to think, honestly. The fact that human people have now been on this ride. But if you know what I'm talking about, basically, Voltron is a upcoming Mack Rides striker coaster, which is scheduled to open at Europa-Park in Germany late this year. Obviously, it is their 15th roller coaster to ever open, and it looks absolutely mental, honestly. It looks so much fun as well. Looks like one of Mack Rides' most innovative roller coasters. Obviously, it's themed around Nikola Tesla and his inventions with electricity, and the whole ride is part of a brand new Croatia-themed land, which is obviously part of an expansion of Europa-Park. And obviously, this looks like one of Mack Rides' best roller coasters to date, and I'm not even joking. Like literally, this looks like a step up from like the previous version of Striker Coaster, which I'm not sure if this is the same, like a new version of the Big Dipper coaster, or if this is a completely new model. I'm pretty sure it's like a new generation version of the Big Dipper coaster, with the original one being Lost Gravity at Wallaby Holland. This is now just a completely different ride, because it literally has so many unique elements, so many like different launches, turntables, switch tracks, backwards vertical spike multipass launch, and so many cool and wacky elements as well. And this whole ride looks so much fun. And recently, obviously they've been testing it over sort of like the past few weeks, but recently they were actually given approval to allow human riders on it. So they actually sent the first ever human riders on Voltron, and who better to send for the first ever human riders than the Mack family? Obviously, if you don't know, Mack Rides, they are a family-owned company, and they actually also own and operate Europa-Park itself. So the first humans to ever ride Voltron was the Mack family, and they said it was an absolutely incredible experience with so much airtime, so ingeniously designed and well engineered, and such a fun experience with so many cool elements. And that's really good coming from them, who obviously own Mack Rides and Europa-Park, who started everything. And obviously now that human riders can go on it won't be long until it actually opens later this year. But either way, I cannot wait for Voltron to officially open at Europa-Park later this year at some point in 2024. In other news today, the lift hill on Hyperia has now gone vertical. And we are literally just in like sort of the final few like sort of leaps and bounds with this ride now that the lift hills start going up. It's all exciting times, yeah. But basically, if you know what I'm talking about, basically Hyperia is a Mack Rides hypercoaster, yet another attraction from Mack Rides. There's going to be a standout attraction this year at Thorpe Park. It is a Mack Rides hypercoaster, and upon opening, when it does open, it's going to break the title of the UK's tallest and fastest roller coaster. It's going to reach a maximum height of 236 feet tall. So in comparison, the current tallest, not for long, maybe like in a week or two, but the current tallest is the big one at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, which stands at 213 foot tall. So Hyperia is going to be 23 foot taller than the big one, which is mental. Obviously, it has been planned over sort of like the last couple of years, and is part of Thorpe Park's new sort of era to create more sort of like they're becoming less like the island like no other and more the home of feel good thrills, and sort of leaning towards more positive energy and sort of like really positive sort of themed attractions and more light themed attractions. And Hyperia is just the start of that. We were having a very angelic theme to it, which is actually really cool to see. Which is actually really refreshing to see, obviously, because like most theme parks, when they build a ride of this scale, they usually like theme it so it's like an absolutely terrifying thing, like I don't know, just something really dark and sinister and scary. But like they've themed it something really angelic and very, very positive theme, so that's obviously really refreshing to see. Obviously vertical construction has been progressing quite a lot over the past few months. Most of the ride is actually now finished, but recently they've actually started commencing construction on the lift hill, and obviously they started the first drop like I think a couple of weeks ago, I think last week, but now that they've started the lift hill, they've actually gone past the horizon line above the tree line for the lift hill so far, and combine that with the first drop, that means all the gold bits of track and supports are now in place. So there's only white track left to be placed, and there's not that much either. There's maybe like, I don't know, a dozen track pieces left to place, if that. But I just looks absolutely stunning, and I cannot wait to see Hyperia in its full form with completed track layout. And I cannot wait to hopefully get on Hyperia, and I cannot wait to see what it looks like when it opens later this year. Also in the news today, Blackpool Pleasure Beach have just suddenly rebranded to Pleasure Beach Resort. Now, I don't think we really saw this rebrand coming, I certainly didn't anyway. But if you don't know what I'm talking about, basically Blackpool Pleasure Beach is an amusement park located in Blackpool, England. It's home to 10 roller coasters in total. It's actually one of the most popular amusement parks in the UK actually. It's home to rides such as Icon, Big One, Infusion's not a good ride, but like things like Grand National, Big Dipper, a lot of really good attractions, and obviously a lot of really classic vintage attractions as well, because obviously the park's been operating since 1896, I think, 1896, yeah. So 125 years, actually more than that, I think it's like 127 years at this point. Obviously they've been operating for a really long time. They've always, most of the time they've been gone by the name as Blackpool Pleasure Beach. There was like a point sort of like the early 2000s when they were known as Pleasure Beach Blackpool, but it was still a sort of similar name. Obviously the last sort of few years, over like the past 10 years, more than that, they've been going by Blackpool Pleasure Beach. Obviously it is not like a theme park where we've got like loads of heavy theme, and it is literally just a normal like sort of amusement park. It's not got one specific themed. The only sort of themed land in there is Nickelodeon Land, which is the kids area. But none of the rides really have that much theming. None of the rides are specifically themed. So obviously, like the reason for this rebrand to Pleasure Beach Resort, I don't really know. They barely even pass off as a resort, to be honest. They've only got 2 hotels. It's not like Alton Towers where they're actually officially called Alton Towers Resort. On their site, they have 5 hotels, a water park, an extraordinary golf experience. They used to have a spa, but not anymore. So the Alton Towers are not just the theme park; they are a full sort of experience, like a destination experience. Blackpool Pleasure Beach is literally just a seaside amusement park. I saw it as an upscaled seaside amusement park because it's got some really good ride hardware with 2 hotels. That's it. So I don't see what the Pleasure Beach Resort rebrand is for. A lot of people, it's got caused like quite a lot of uproar online. A lot of people really hate it. I'm not really like particular that like. I don't hate it that much. In fact, I don't even hate it at all. It's really just the change to the resort part that confuses me. The logo itself is pretty much the same, sort of in terms of like the style of the old one, so it doesn't really bother me that much. But either way, nothing is actually changing at the park, which is good. So I cannot wait to see when Pleasure Beach Resort reopens later this year in March. And finally in the news today, the brand new sit-down trains for Shockwave have officially arrived at Drayton Manor. And honestly, like, this ride is, honestly, I'm kind of confused to this decision, but I kind of get why they're doing it, why they're changing the trains from stand-up to sit-down. But if you don't know what I'm talking about, basically, Shockwave is an Intamin, it used to be a stand-up roller coaster, an Intamin stand-up coaster that first opened in 1994 at Drayton Manor. It was the only stand-up roller coaster in Europe, and I believe it's the only Intamin stand-up coaster left in operation. Obviously operated from 1994 pretty much really well, it had a really good run as the stand-up coaster. up until 2023, where obviously in like 2020 and 2021, Drayton Manor was actually purchased by the Looping Group, which is the same sort of company that owns the likes of Pleasurewood Hills and other amusement attractions. And they stated they wanted to make Drayton Manor their flagship park. And boy, how have they been making sure they want to make it their flagship park, because honestly they've been investing so much into Drayton Manor over the last couple of years. Especially since this park just before Looping Group actually bought it, it kind of went into administration as well. So before Looping Group came along, things weren't really looking good for Drayton Manor at all. Obviously the Looping Group purchased Drayton Manor. They've they've refurbished that whole area where Shockwave and Maelstrom is and turned it into Adventure Cove. They've added a new Viking land, and now they're building the new Intamin family lift and launch coaster in a new western themed land. Their first new roller coaster in about 12 years, I think. But obviously that meant that they're trying to make the park more family oriented, which I kind of get. That means that there has to be changes to Shockwave. I don't think they want to get rid of it purely because of how iconic it is. So instead, at the end of 2023, they announced that it's going to be closing, but it's going to be refurbished. It's going to have a lower height restriction, which means that the trains are going to be converted from stand-up to sit-down trains with lap bars. And it's going to have a lower height restriction, which means that much younger people can ride it. So it's got a much more wider audience now that younger people can ride it as well. It's going to have the same layout with the 4 inversions and everything like that, but it's going to be a sit-down coaster with lap bars. And obviously recently, the first sort of cars for the trains arrived on site, and I actually can't wait. I'm actually interested to see how this goes with Drayton Manor, how its reception is with Shockwave with sit-down trains, but I can't wait to see what it looks like. So that is it for this week's episode of Coast News. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you did, then please make sure to like and subscribe, and comment below if you'd like to see in the next video. Goodbye.